Morning, everybody. I'm here with my colleague Craig Megan. I'm Xander Richards, and we're just gonna have a quick run through of what's going on in Scottish politics and, of course, UK politics today. On our front page today, there's the story which is it's really been absolutely everywhere, hasn't it? And now it's back again, thanks to the publication of these 4 photos from ITV. Got the exclusive, as you can see there. What do you think about this, Craig? Do you think the picture's going to change anything?
Well, I mean, you'd hope so, but I mean, some Tories seemed split. You had people like Ruth Davidson, who already called for Boris Johnson to resign, saying his position was untenable. You had another Tory MP saying that, this showed that he lied to Parliament. But there were other Tory MPs like Peter Bowen, who went on Times Radio and said that the picture doesn't prove anything. At the end of the day, it's up to, Tory MPs if they're going to submit a vote of no confidence. Whether it will change.
That Peter Bone interview was definitely interesting. I mean, there's a story on our website if you're not 100% aware of what he was saying. But he claimed that these 4 pictures, which very clearly show Boris Johnson drinking, toasting with a group of at least 8 other people. There's obviously the photographer and allegedly even more people in the room. Now, they were supposedly taken on the 13th of November 2020, where at the time, rules completely banned this type of event. But Peter Bone seems to think that the pictures don't prove anything. He actually said that the police had conducted a very thorough investigation, which is definitely an interesting way of describing it, because there were reports in the Mirror and elsewhere that of the 6 law-breaking events, 6 events for which other people were fined for attending, Boris Johnson's presence at only 2 of those was actually investigated. Now, if we're asked to do 6 jobs and we only do 2 of them, I think calling that a very thorough job is generous to say the least.
It does seem tough for him to get out of this one, because he was asked on this day, ITV said the picture was taken, whether there was a party. We know that at least one person who was at that party was fined. So therefore, it seems that the Met decided it was an illegal gathering, but they haven't explained why Boris Johnson himself wasn't fined. So there's so many questions to be answered on this one, and it does seem tricky, especially because it's so visual. You've got Boris Johnson toasting, you've got snacks and takeaway boxes, you've got booze everywhere, a wee bottle of hand sanitizer on the back, and the red government briefcase as well. Just sitting in the drinks trolley. So yeah.
I mean, it's supposedly taken on November the 13th, which is the same day as one of the 2 events which police have reportedly probed. I mean, why Boris Johnson wouldn't have been fined for it when others have been is, as you say, a really interesting question. Robert Peston, and obviously I'm just mentioning him because he's with ITV and they're the ones who have these pictures. But there's a lot of reports coming out of Downing Street that because these fines have been disproportionately levied on both women and really junior staff, they feel angry, they feel scapegoated. So I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I think there's a feeling among journalists that we're probably going to get more of these pictures leaking out as these disgruntled lower down staff who have been fined take some form of revenge against their bosses that have really landed them in hot water and just gotten off scot-free themselves. So I mean, this story it's got legs. It's gonna run for days. I mean, these pictures are really incendiary. So I mean, we could talk about it. We could talk about it a lot more, but let's move on. Let's move on. So what else is happening today, Craig? What are you going to be looking at today?
Well, I actually interviewed a 103-year-old man just a few days ago because he got a lifetime membership of the SNP. He's been an indie he's been with independents since the 50s and 60s, and I was talking to him about his life, and about how it felt to be a member of, the SNP and to be granted that. Yeah, it was very interesting to hear his stories about how, similar to a story I did last week about an 83-year-old who was also, we were talking to because he was a long-term indie activist. As you know, things have changed, and once upon a time, SNP and independents weren't a mainstream point of view. Yeah, as well as that, I'm still running my ongoing series about the cost of living. So if there's any readers who have, who are struggling with the cost of living, as many people in Scotland and the UK generally are, then yeah, you can contact me on my email, which is craig.megan@newsquest.co.uk. What about yourself, Sander?
Well, the story that I'm focusing on, have been focusing on so far this morning, and probably will be focusing on again later today, is this secret polling tribunal that the Cabinet Office are fighting against. Well, it's against Tommy Shepherd, the SNP MP for Edinburgh East, essentially. That was way back in June 2019 that Tommy put in a FOI request, a Freedom of Information request, with the Cabinet Office to have them release their internal polling on the union. And they refused. It went to the Information Commissioner. I think the Information Commissioner upheld the Tory government's position. So it then went to a tribunal. It's quite messy, so forgive me if I get a couple of these details wrong along the way. But it then went to a first-tier tribunal. Now, that was in June of last year. And the tribunal ruled that the Tory government's arguments against releasing this secret data that they've collated on attitudes to the union and the constitution just weren't clear. They said that it didn't really make sense. Essentially, the Tory government are arguing that because they may change policy on the union, because they are in a position to make policy on the union, it doesn't matter that they are not making policy. So the actual exemption that they're leaning on is only for areas in which policy is currently being made. So, I mean, it does have, as Tommy Shepherd said last week when I spoke to him, it does have really far-reaching implications for the Freedom of Information Act in general, this case. If the Tory government win, if they successfully argue that just because they may make policy on something, they don't have to release information on it, I mean, it's really a carte blanche for them to just ignore freedom of information laws full stop. I mean, of course, they might still apply to things like the BBC, but as far as government goes, then yeah, freedom of information laws could really be neutered quite effectively if the Tory government does manage to argue its case here. I mean, it hasn't succeeded so far, but you never know. These things can often be the judgment of the judge in sitting, and they are, as far as I'm aware, currently in sitting. I believe that began at around 10 a.m. and is expected to run at least through the morning. So we should have more on that later today. Elsewhere, if I get some time, but I'm not, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. There is the Northern Ireland Troubles Bill's second reading at Westminster, which is an interesting time for Boris Johnson and his Tory government to be pushing this through, that's for sure. I mean, in wake of Sinn Féin's win and the DUP's refusal to join the Stormont executive, there's yet more paralysis in the executive in Northern Ireland, which is, yeah, I mean, it's the Northern Ireland Protocol. The UK government are threatening to rip it up. They're saying they're going to legislate to remove it, which is against what the majority of people seem to support, at least in the Northern Irish Assembly. And then this bill of the UK government's, which will essentially mean that any British soldiers that committed atrocities or murders during the Troubles won't be able to be prosecuted, is not particularly popular on the island of Ireland. So, I mean, the UK government is having a bit of a rough time in its relationships with the island of Ireland at the moment. So, yeah, definitely something to be keeping an eye on. I mean, there's just so much on. There's so much on. Hollywood's absolutely full as well today. I mean, there's a topical question on monkeypox which is another story that's flying around everywhere. But yeah, if you want to stay on top of everything as we are trying to do, you can actually take out a free trial, free 30-day subscription trial with us at the moment. So you can get all the exclusive columns from people like Joanna Cherry, Leslie Riddock. We've got Jerry Hassan on the site today. David Pratt, of course, who's been following the Ukraine war really, really in depth recently. His coverage has been amazing. So, yeah, if you are thinking about taking out a subscription with us, now's the time, because 30 days for free is, well, I mean, you can't claim at that, can you? So yeah, we better head off though back to work so we can start producing all that content. So yeah, well, thanks very much for joining us, and that's us for the day.